This November, almost every big movie bombed at the box office. One after another, 14 flops in a row. The new Predator flopped, The Running Man remake too, and yes, that's actually Nicolas Cage playing Jesus' dad in a horror that made less than 150 grand. Which bomb lost the most money? Let's find out. Let's just say what everyone was thinking. Nicolas Cage playing Jesus' dad in a horror movie was never going to pull in real box office money. Magnolia Pictures did a super limited release. Sometimes I feel like they put it out just to mess with everyone. The movie's based on some obscure gospel with teenage Jesus as the main character, and he's dealing with some creepy demonic powers. Cage is Joseph, the carpenter. British singer FKA Twigs is Mary. That's already setting up for controversy, and sure enough, some countries banned it for being offensive to Christian values. Magnolia tried to market this to horror fans and faith-based audiences at the same time. Probably hoped for that surprise faith movie hit, but they missed by a mile. The movie just doesn't work as horror or as a religious film. The tone here is all over the place, and the story is a total waste of the locations and the basic premise. Even the controversy didn't help. Nobody cared. The writer-director Lotfi Nathan said he got the idea from his dad after hearing about this obscure gospel. He thought it would be interesting to do something like dark teenage Jesus falling in with the wrong crowd. But the movie made just $143,000 against a $10 million budget. Not much else to say. Christy is Sydney Sweeney's fourth flop this year. The American Eagle thing probably didn't help, but this one really didn't have a shot. She tried to do the Dwayne Johnson artsy sports drama thing, hoping for serious actor points, but it didn't work. The distributor gave Christy a huge release, over 2,000 screens nationwide. But the problem is, nobody cares about some lesbian woman boxer from the 90s. Not nearly enough to justify a $15 million budget, and there's talk it was actually closer to 30. It opened wide, did just $2 million, and then dropped 92% in its second weekend. That's the worst second weekend drop in box office history. Black Bear, the distributor, actually delayed releasing the numbers for a few days. Maybe opening it wide was the wrong call. Christy is the kind of film that could have benefited from a slower, smaller rollout, build some word of mouth. Sweeney's got more stuff coming, Housemaid in December, and the next season of Euphoria for HBO next spring. She took the flop pretty well, even used the exact same thing The Rock used after Smashing Machine tanked. We don't always just make art for numbers, we make it for impact. And Christy has been the most impactful project of my life. She's actually good in the role, but the movie is just flat and by the numbers. I know it feels like everyone was talking about Badlands this year, so it surprised me too when it actually flopped at the box office. The real problem here was the budget. The movie cost $105 million to make, and with the amount of computer graphics on screen, it's not hard to see why. And that's despite they literally did everything to make this thing a hit. Massive marketing push, and they went PG-13. Literally just so every teenager and their parents could get in. Even Trachtenberg's Prey was R-rated. But here producers went on record saying the whole idea was to broaden the audience. Even tried to spin it with it'll feel R, but there's no red blood, so it's PG-13. After all that, it did fine at the box office, $174.7 million total. It had a $40 million opening weekend, which is a franchise record. And right now it's sitting at number 27 worldwide for 2025. But that's nowhere near enough to cover what they spent, especially when you add in marketing. Predator has never been a billion-dollar franchise. These movies have always pulled decent numbers, but never blockbuster level. This time, the international audience didn't even show up. Usually these things play better overseas, but this one's almost a 1-to-1 split between US and international, which is just weird for this franchise. Even Alien Romulus, which pretty much everyone hated, had a smaller budget and ended up doing better. With all the math, Disney's probably staring at a $100 million loss on this one, even if they're already planning to milk it for streaming. No way this thing ever gets close to break even. Nuremberg is a classic example of an Oscar bait period piece. You've got Russell Crowe, a big war drama, and a setup that's kind of in the same lane as The Darkest Hour. That one pulled in awards hype and a decent box office a few years ago. But this time, things are different. Nuremberg came out with a pretty wide release, almost 1,900 theaters. But it still ended up flopping at the box office, just $15.8 million, back off an $11.8 million budget. The story follows Douglas Kelly, played by Rami Malek. He's a U.S. Army psychiatrist sent to evaluate Hermann Goering, Russell Crowe, and a bunch of other top Nazis at the Nuremberg trials. Supporting cast is actually strong, with Richard E. Grant and Michael Shannon. The movie premiered at Toronto, and it actually got a 4-minute standing ovation, which is one of the longest ever for the festival. Sony Pictures Classics kept talking it up as a real theater-going experience, that kind of big historical thriller that studios don't really make much anymore. Critics mostly liked it, and everyone praised Crowe as Goering, but none of it helped at the box office. It's on all those Oscar prediction lists, some are even saying Best Picture, but so far people just aren't showing up. No one's surprised. These movies with Oscar bait written all over them don't pull in crowds like they used to. Here's one that honestly nobody even knew existed. Sarah's Oil cost $18 million, made just $11, and you probably missed it completely. Not that long ago, Zachary Levi was Shazam, headlining big superhero movies. Now he's in something like this, a tiny, real-life drama with barely any marketing. There are people who'll say his career dropped off because of his political opinions. Who knows? What's clear is Sarah's Oil never got a shot at making any money. The story is based on Sarah Rector, an African-American girl born in early 1900s Oklahoma. She believes there's oil under her land, turns out she's right, and ends up one of America's first black female millionaires at 11 years old. MGM and Amazon gave it a pretty wide release, over 2,400 theaters, and it still only opened at number 4 at the box office. No idea why they thought it would do better with a wide rollout. This is the kind of thing you put in limited release for a week, not nationwide. The wild part is, the reviews are actually really good. People who saw it liked it. I bet it'll do a lot better on Prime Video, where it might finally find its audience. So the Four Horsemen are back, plus a bunch of new young characters who all magically outsmart the original cast every 5 minutes. They dumbed down your favorite characters just so some random teenage girl could look clever. You can tell they tried to pitch this to Gen Z, but Gen Z really couldn't care less about a leftover franchise from the 2010s. Still, the movie pulled in decent numbers. Out-earned the Running Man remake, which is honestly hilarious. It overperformed on opening weekend. Lionsgate was hoping for 12 to 17 million, it pulled in 21. After Thanksgiving, it's up to $187.4 million, which looks like a win, especially after Lionsgate had nothing but flops lately. But that's not actually enough to break even. They'd need something like 225 to 300 million global just to get out of the red. That's not happening, even with steady box office legs. Reviews were whatever. 61% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is actually the highest score of the whole trilogy, but not exactly a glowing endorsement. The funniest thing here is Lionsgate had already announced a 4th movie months before the 3rd one even came out. Now that the 3rd one flopped, you have to wonder if they'll pull the plug on number 4. The Running Man remake was basically a big screen test for Glenn Powell. Hollywood keeps trying to make him the next A-lister, but this movie really proves he doesn't have that pull. It actually got beaten at the box office by Now You See Me 3, even after they moved the release date to dodge Predator Badlands. They dodged the wrong movie and got steamrolled anyway. The original made $38 million on a $27 million budget, and that had Schwarzenegger at his peak. So why anyone thought a $110 million remake would hit big is beyond me. Right now, the box office is just barely over 60. Second weekend, it dropped over 70%. Paramount's set to lose a ton on this. Break-even point was supposedly $260 million, so they're staring at over $200 million in losses. I doubt Edgar Wright gets another massive budget anytime soon after this. I was honestly rooting for this one. Brendan Fraser deserves more good movies. Definitely not another Mummy sequel that nobody's asking for. But Rental Family just didn't catch on at the box office. It wasn't a huge project anyway, $10 million budget, but Searchlight needed it to hit $25 million just to break even. In the film, Fraser plays an American actor based in Japan, and he ends up working for a rental family agency. That's actually a real thing in Japan. There are hundreds of companies that rent out people to lonely clients. So there's some heavy, tear-jerking moments in this, maybe a little too sweet sometimes, but Fraser's genuinely great in it. Some folks even put him in their early Oscar predictions. His performance really is that strong. It's a shame it flopped, especially considering the film has been in development since 1929. Rotten Tomatoes has it at 86% from over 100 critics, so clearly people who saw it liked it. But with Searchlight behind it, you know the promotion and rollout weren't huge. They did put it out in almost 2,000 theaters over Thanksgiving, which is solid, but still it disappeared. Rental Family joins a long list of Fall Festival Awards hopefuls that totally flopped, like The Smashing Machine with The Rock or Die My Love with Jennifer Lawrence. It's just brutal out there for these kinds of movies. And speaking of Die My Love, this one was everywhere back in spring, mostly because Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson star in it. It premiered at Cannes and made a lot of noise, then Mubi bought it for $24 million. That was the biggest deal at Cannes this year. Like with Aronofsky's Mother, which also starred Lawrence, Die My Love is not an easy watch. Lawrence plays Grace, who has a baby, and then her postpartum depression turns into psychosis. So yeah, definitely not what most people want to see on a Friday night. After Cannes, the reviews were all over the place, so they took the movie back to the editing room and reworked it. That meant skipping all the big fall festivals. But even with all that, Die My Love just didn't connect with audiences. It opened on over 1,500 screens, but landed a D+ cinema score. For context, other movies out that weekend, like Predator or even Christy, were getting A- and B+ scores. Even with Lawrence and Pattinson everywhere doing press, even with viral clips, it just never landed. So far, it's made $8.3 million. Not that shocking for an R-rated art film about postpartum depression, or whatever you want to call it. The upside here is that Lawrence is basically a lock for another Oscar nomination. Keeper had a lot of hype behind it. James Wan said it's a terrifying descent into madness. Guillermo del Toro called it a horror origami that skillfully folds into itself. When you get those kinds of endorsements, you'd think you're about to see a breakout hit. For a minute there, Osgood Perkins looked like the next big thing in horror. But none of it helped. Keeper absolutely bombed. Neon, the distributor, made some weird calls. They didn't screen the film widely for critics, said they wanted to preserve the mystery. Nobody was buying that, especially with a trailer that already gave away so much. Most people figured Neon was just scared of the reviews, and yeah, they had a reason. Critics called Keeper Perkins' worst movie yet, and it landed a D+ cinema score. The budget was $8 million and box office just $4.8 million. This is actually Perkins' second film this year. After The Monkey, the wild Stephen King adaptation that made $68 million on a $10 million budget. So it kinda makes sense, Neon just keeps throwing money at him. The one thing Perkins has going for him is sticking to these micro-budget horror movies. As long as he can turn some kind of profit, Neon will keep saying yes. The first one was one of those historical war action movies set during the Lapland War, Finland versus Nazi Germany. It was dirt cheap to make and did well at the box office, then really blew up on streaming. That's why Lionsgate picked up the sequel for the US, thinking they could repeat that same magic. Didn't work out this time. For the sequel, they doubled the budget. First one cost about €6 million, this one was $12.2 million. Lionsgate pushed it out wide, over 2,200 theaters. But with these movies, the whole point is making them cheap, then raking in the profit. So far, the box office is only $7.4 million. I honestly think it'll still do pretty well on streaming. It's already at 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, 86 critics, so the reviews are there. But it flopped in theaters. People in 2025 just aren't showing up for these kinds of action movies on the big screen. They watch them at home. Lionsgate keeps trying to find the next John Wick, but that's a once-in-a-generation thing. They keep trying, though. Can't blame them for it. This one is pure European festival material. Sentimental Value is about Nora, a stage actress who gets pulled back into her estranged father's orbit. He's a famous director trying for a comeback after his ex-wife dies. He wants Nora to star in his new personal movie, but when she says no, the lead role goes to a young Hollywood star played by Elle Fanning. It's your classic family drama set in the world of filmmaking, all about emotional manipulation. The film actually took home the Grand Prix at Cannes this year. But you know how this goes with European art house. Great cinema, zero box office. It made $2.5 million on a $7.8 million budget. Still, I'm glad movies like this are getting made. It's not always about the money. But yeah, nobody expects these films to be commercial hits anymore, and they haven't been for a long time. On the award side, Sentimental Value is basically on every Gold Derby Oscar prediction list for Best Picture. A nomination's pretty much guaranteed, even though there's zero chance it beats one battle after another. Paul Thomas Anderson, who made that film, literally called Sentimental Value one of the best movies of the year. He said the whole industry is constantly complaining. But let's take a look at this year. Eddington Weapons, two Richard Linklater films, Sentimental Value. Whoever wants to start complaining about movies right now needs to cool it. King Ivory basically tried to go for what Soderbergh did with Traffic, just with fentanyl and zero poetry. You gotta respect the ambition though. It's gritty, has some wild action scenes, and nobody here is pretending it's going to be a crowd pleaser. This thing spent a year just trying to get into theaters. It first showed up at Venice last year and only got a proper release in November 2025. If you want one more reason to check it out, it's one of Graham Greene's last films. Other than that, it's a pretty standard R-rated crime thriller about fentanyl trafficking. You can tell they did the homework. Real law enforcement, gang members, even migrants and addicts worked with the filmmakers. The story has its moments, but also plenty of weak spots. The plot tries for realism, almost documentary style, but a lot of the characters, especially the victims, just never come into focus. The whole thing is so fragmented, you never really get a chance to care about anyone. Roadside Attractions put it in 752 theaters, but most of the showtimes were terrible. Some cities you could only catch it at 11 p.m. and only in one theater. No chance at making money that way. Box office ended up at 154 grand, which is a total humiliation for a $7.5 million budget. It deserved a fairer shot, honestly. Benedict Cumberbatch had two movies this year and both pretty much tanked. The Thing with Feathers is a small drama about a family trying to deal with grief, a father and his two sons after losing their wife and mother. This one premiered at Sundance in January, got a 48 out of 100 on Metacritic, and never really built up any buzz. The budget was just $6 million, but even with Cumberbatch starring, the movie only managed $379,000 at the box office. The distributor, Briarcliff Entertainment, put it in maybe 400 theaters total, so it barely got seen. It's weird thinking about how just a few years back Cumberbatch was everywhere. Sherlock on BBC was huge, there was a Star Trek movie, then he jumped into the MCU and started showing up in all those superhero movies. For a while he was basically a guaranteed box office draw, not anymore apparently.